Good morning, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History 25th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration. Our presenter this morning, Miss Gwen Locklear, will begin in just a moment. But we want to begin with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter, Ms. Gwen Locklear. We have many additional resources about the American Indian Festival and North Carolina on our website, NCAIHC.com. We thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation for helping to make this event possible. Now, let's get started. Welcome, Ms. Gwen Locklear. What are you sharing with us?
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share some stories with you today. I love telling stories, and my stories are usually animal trickster stories that have a meaning or a moral at the end of it. But first, I want to talk about storytelling with American Indians, especially long time ago. So we didn't have books for children to learn, but they still had to learn certain things. And so we didn't have the books, but we drew pictures to tell stories to our kids. So if there was something that we wanted them to remember, then we would take the animal skins, and we could take charcoal and hot sticks and burn stories into the animal skins with the pictures. So everybody's read picture books, I'm sure. And so we would burn them into the hides. And so I have one right here, but it's kind of hard to see and read. But I did draw one out on a poster board here. And so I want you to look at it and see all the different pictures. And, we're going to put words in with those pictures. So this is the story of the buffalo hunt. And so can you tell that it's drawn out in a circle? So where do you think we would start reading the story? From the outside, the left side, the right side, right in the middle. That's where we're going to start. So we have how many Indian brothers? 1, 2, 2. They're going to go hunt for some buffalo. So they traveled for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. And after 4 days, they caught them 2 horses. They get on their horses, they travel through a stream, through the woods, and over a river, and they made a camp for 1 night. The next day, they traveled over some mountains, and they saw some buffalo. So they got on their horse, they took their bow and arrows, and they shot buffalo. And they took him back to the camp where they hung the meat out to dry. And so this is a story of how we would preserve a story about this buffalo hunt. So now I want to share with you some of my favorite stories about animals. I just love telling stories about the animals. So let's see. I think I'll share about the race at White Hill. So long ago in the animal world, White Boy, the deer, he loved to brag about how fast he could run. And all the other animal nations, they knew Kea the turtle as a mighty warrior, but as a runner, they said he was just a slow traveler. Well, the deer, he loved bragging about how fast he could run, and he just did it all the time. Well, Kay the turtle, he just got so tired of hearing Deer brag about how fast he could run. He says, "You're good at fast talking, but I think I'm a better runner than you are." And Deer's like, "No, you're not. I'm faster than you. You can't run. You don't know how to run." And Deer says, "I could run from Bear Swamp to Big Bay in less than half a day." Turtle's like, "Oh, that's just a snail's crawl for that." And they went at it like this for 3 days and 3 nights. And the other animals, they just got so tired of hearing about it. They said, "Look, let's see if we can settle this. Let's have a race." Deer said, "That sounds like a great idea." He said, "We can start at dawn and race until the sun sets." And Bear said, "No, that's not going to work because you can't measure that. There's no way to tell who could win a race like that. Why don't we just set a special race track kind of thing?" And the animals were like, "Well, what you thinking about?" "Well, we could start at the base of White Hill." And they called this place White Hill because of the white sand that sit on that slope. They said, "Well, we could start here at the base of this hill and we'll have them run over them 4 fields over there. There's a field of beans and corn and tobacco and squash. And then there's a ditch in between each one of them fields. So if we let them run through them fields, cross that ditch, cross them ditches and get back, then whoever wins, that'll decide who's the fastest runner." All the animal nations agreed. They said, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." So they set a date that it would be the first day after the first new moon. So Turtle went home that night, and all of his turtle family come together for a council meeting. They were sit up there next to the Lumbee River. And Turtle said, "Well, I know I shouldn't have done it. And I just couldn't stand hearing him say it anymore. But I told him I was a faster runner, and y'all know that's not true. But I got a way to win, but I'll need everybody's help." So the day of the race came, and they showed up, and Deer was like, "You know what? I know I'm going to win this race, so I'm going to give you a head start." He said, I'll let you crawl through that first field." Turtle said he didn't need the help, but he'd take it. So the race got started. They met at dawn that morning. Turtle didn't say a word. He just crawled into that first field of red corn. And so they waited and they waited till the sun was high up in the sky. And all Deer was doing was talking about how long it was taking Turtle to crawl through that first field of corn. And so when he finally emerged, Bear stood up on a stump and he raised his paw up as a signal for the race to start. And then he dropped it down, "Go!" And Deer took off. And as he's running through that field of corn, he's saying to himself, "Lord have mercy, I'll be through this race before a turtle can crawl out that ditch." Well, when he got through that first field of corn and he looked, there he saw Turtle crawling out of the second ditch. He was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, how did this happen?" So he got busy, went through the next ditch and crawled into the bushy beans. And as he come out of the bushy beans and looked, well, what did he see? Was Turtle crawling into the third field of the broadleaf tobacco. And Deer was like, "How in the world is this happening? How is he doing that?" So he takes off and he runs through the field of beans. And when he comes out, he says, "I know I'm ahead now." But he looks, he rubs his eyes, and what does he see? Turtle crawling into the last field where the squash was growing. Deer was like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." He's starting to get scared. He says, "I've got to go as fast as I can." So he takes off, he runs through that field of squash, and when he comes out, he can see the finish line. He said, I knew it. I knew I was going to win. And before he could take off, he looks and he sees Turtle crawling across the finish line. All the animals started yelling and screaming, Kaya is the fastest runner. Kaya is the fastest runner. Deer was so brokenhearted, he just dropped down in the tall grass. He was sweaty. He was tired. He was just outdone. So the animals got to thinking, wonder how Turtle beat Deer. Deer's kind of fast. Wonder how he did that. So that night, the Turtle Clan got together to have a stomp dance. And they just laughed and laughed because they thought about how easy it was to fool Deer at that race. Because what Turtle had done is he had all of his relatives, his sisters, his aunts, his cousins, they all helped him. That morning before everybody got there, he put one cousin at the end of each field. He had another cousin in all the ditches. And so every time they would see Deer come out, the next turtle would start crawling out. And so that's how Turtle beat Deer at the race at White Hill. So say the elders, they think that Turtle cheated, but Turtle never told anybody what really happened. So, what do you think you learned about that story? About bragging about what you can do, and you see what happened to Deer, and Turtle just bested him. So, another story. I just love my story about my turtles. So, how Turtle flew south for the winter. So, anybody ever seen a turtle fly? Well, let me tell you about this one. It was the time of year that the leaves were falling from the trees. And Turtle was walking through the woods. He was enjoying a beautiful fall day. The sun was shining, beating down on his shell, and he was just loving being outside. As he was walking through the woods, though, he heard all the birds up in the trees just chatting away. Well, he got a little curious. He said, "Hey, what's happening?" And the birds said, "We're getting ready to fly south for the winter." Turtle's like, "Well, what you want to do that for?" And they said, "Don't you know anything? Soon winter will come, and there won't be any food here to eat. But down south where summer lives, they have lots of food." Well, just as soon as they mentioned the word food, Turtle, he was ready to go. "I want to come, I want to come, I want to go down south where summer lives and keeps all that food." And the bird said, "You're a turtle. You can't fly. You have to be able to fly to go down south where summer lives and keeps all that food." But he says, "I have to go. You've got to take me. There has to be a way for me to go. I've got to go down south where summer lives and keeps all that food." And so one of the birds said, "Well, I got an idea. Can you grab hold of something like this stick and not let it go?" Turtle said, "Hey, when I grab hold of something, I don't turn it loose till I'm good and ready." So the bird said, "Well, if you grab onto the middle of this stick, we'll get two big birds to get on each end of it, and they ought to be able to lift you off the ground and take you with us." Turtle said, "Let's go. I'm ready to go down south where summer lives and keeps all that food." So he bit down on the middle of that stick, and got two big birds on each end of it, and they started flapping their wings harder and harder and harder until finally they lifted Turtle up off the ground. Well, Turtle'd never been off the ground before, and the higher up they got, the smaller everything on the ground started to look. Then he starts wondering, wonder how long it's going to take to get down south where summer lives and keeps all that food. I sure hope these birds are going to talk to me. So he starts rolling his eyes. Birds kept right on flying. They didn't pay him not one bit of mind. And Turtle thinks to himself, how rude can they be? They're going to take me down south where summer lives and keeps all that food. They could at least tell me how long it's going to take to get there. They could tell me about those mountains over there. So he starts waving his legs. Birds kept right on flying. They didn't pay him not one bit of mind. Now, Turtle, he's starting to get a little bit upset. And he's like, if they're going to take me down south where summer lives and keeps all that food, they could tell me at least how long is it going to take. Tell me about the mountains over there. Tell me about that pond over there. Birds kept right on flying. They totally ignored Turtle. Well, Turtle, he couldn't stand it anymore. He says, why don't you listen to? Well, just as soon as he opened his mouth to speak, what did he have to do? Let go of that stick. And when he did, down he fell a long, long way. And when he hit the ground, it's a wonder he hadn't been killed. His shell was cracked all over. He ate from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail. And he turned and he looked and he saw that pond. And slowly he crawled over to that pond and he swam down to the bottom to get as far away from the sky as he could get. And he dug down deep into the mud and he went to sleep. And he slept there all through the winter and didn't wake up again until the next spring. So that's why it is today that only birds fly south where summer lives and keeps all that food, and turtles who still walk so slow and have all those cracked shells sleep all through the winter. So what did you learn from that story? One, birds do what in the wintertime? They fly south, which is called migration. Turtles, who have all those cracked shells and still walk so slow, what do they do in the wintertime? They sleep, which is called hibernation. So a simple story about birds and a turtle could teach children about hibernation and migration. So another story to share with you. And this one is about Rabbit and how Rabbit looked a long, long time ago. He looked very different from what he does today. Long, long time ago, Rabbit had little round ears. And a long, long time ago, Rabbit had long, straight arms. And a long, long time ago, Rabbit had long, straight legs. And a long, long time ago, he also had a long, bushy tail. And a long, long time ago, he had a snout for a nose. Well, Rabbit still likes to eat, just like he does today. And so he was out eating. And as he was out eating, he was walking around and thinking, and he started thinking about snow. And he was like, oh, I wish it would snow. And he's eating and he's thinking about the snow. Oh, I wish it would snow. Then he remembered what his grandmother told him one time. If you wish for something hard enough, it just might happen. So he started wishing, oh, I wish it would snow. Oh, I wish it would snow. And then he saw a few flakes. And as he started singing louder and harder, he saw more flakes and more snow, and it just snowed, and he kept singing, oh, I wish it would snow, oh, I wish it would snow, and it snowed and snowed until the snow was so high, he was up in the trees, and he's looking around, and he's just having the best time in the snow, and then he's getting tired, he's ready to go home, but his den's covered, he can't go home. Oh, what am I going to do? And he thought, well, I can crawl over here in this tree and wrap up these branches and sleep for a while. I think that's what I'll do. So he crawls over there, climbs over there in those branches and wraps his tail around those branches and made him a nice little place to drift off to sleep. Guess what woke him up? The nice warm sunshine. And what does sunshine do to snow? Makes it melt. When Rabbit woke up and he looked around, the snow was gone. And where was he? Up in a tree. And guess what? Rabbits are not good tree climbers. So he's looking around. How am I going to get out of this tree? and he's looking and he's leaning. Oh, I got to get out of this tree. What in the world? How am I going to get out of this tree? And he leans over and he's looking, and all of a sudden, whack, his tail broke off. And when his tail broke off, he started falling out of that tree. And as he's falling out of that tree, his ears are getting caught in the branches, stretch and pull until they are as long as they are today. And when Rabbit fell out of that tree, it shoved his long, straight arms up into his body. So that's why he has those little short arms today. And when Rabbit fell out of that tree, it broke his long legs in half, and that's why he has to hop everywhere that he goes. And when Rabbit fell out of that tree, his long snoot nose shoved up in his face. That's why he has that little bunny nose like he has today. And of course, his tail broke off, and so that's why he doesn't have a tail. And so it is today that in the springtime, if you're walking out in the woods and you see a willow tree and you see them little fuzzy buds up in that willow tree, they say that's the part of Rabbit's tail that was left in that tree. And so that's how Rabbit came to look as he does today. So, one more story? All right. So let me tell you about Possum. Oh, how many of you have ever seen a possum? Aren't they the most beautiful animals in the world? Yes, they are. No, they're not. They're ugly. But a long time ago, Possum, he had the most beautiful tail of all the animals. It was covered in long, silky hair, and Possum liked nothing better than taking his fingers and combing the hair on his tail and showing all the other animals, just look at my tail. I have the most beautiful tail of all the animals. And he did that every day, every time he saw somebody. Look at my tail. I have the most beautiful tail. One day, the animals got to thinking and got together, and they said, I'm so sick of Possum sticking that tail in front of me. Look at my tail. Look at my tail. We got to do something about that. Rabbit raised his hands. He said, I could handle that if you want me to. Well, Rabbit, he's kind of a little trickster, and they were like, well, we don't want you to hurt him. He said, well, I won't hurt him, but I'll take care of the problem. And they said, well, don't even tell us. Just handle the thing. And so that night he goes over to Possum's house, knocks on the door. Come in. Oh, Rabbit, so good to see you. You come to see my tail, didn't you? I have the most beautiful tail. Oh, you just come to see my tail. And Rabbit said, well, I came with a message from Chief Bear. He wants you to speak at the council meeting tomorrow. Me? He wants me to speak? I know why. It's because of my tail. It's because I have the most beautiful tail of all the animals. And Rabbit looked down at that tail and he said, your tail looks a tad dirty to me. And Possum said, no. He said, yeah, whatever am I going to do? I want it to look its best tomorrow when I speak in front of all the other animals. And Rabbit said, well, I can make up some of my special medicine if you want me to. And Possum said, you would do that for me? He said, sure, me and you's buds. I'd love to do that. And so Rabbit goes out and he mixes up his special medicine. He comes back out and he rubs it all over Possum's tail. And he says, now you're going to leave this on all night. We're going to take this snake skin and wrap it up, and you leave it on all night. Don't take it off till you get to the meeting tomorrow. Possum's like, oh, Rabbit, I just don't know how I'm going to thank you. I just love the idea of this. Oh, however am I going to thank you? And he says, no need to thank me. He said, just show up at the meeting tomorrow. Possum went to bed that night. He could hardly stand it. All he could think about was how beautiful his tail was going to look at that council meeting the next day. Finally, the morning came. Possum goes over to the meeting. Chief Bear calls him up, and he starts strutting back and forth. My friends, I have been asked to speak at this council meeting because of my tail. I have the most beautiful tail of all the animals. And he's got this great big grin on his face, and he reaches around and he grabs that snake skin and he snatched it off. And when he did, all the hair fell off of his tail. His tail was naked. It was ugly. All the animals started laughing. And when Possum turned around and saw his tail, the grin froze on his face and he passed out from fright. And he didn't wake up until all the other animals had left to go home. So that's why it is today that Possum now has the ugliest tail of all the animals.
Those were 3 wonderful stories, Miss Gwen Locklear. And we have about 5 minutes left, so we'd like to ask one question.
Okay.
Those stories that you shared cover the animal worlds of the deer, the bear, the turtle, the possum, and the birds. And in particular, you talked about that race at White Hill. Can you tell us, in your opinion, what is it about the turtle and the family that resonates with this story tradition?
Oh my. Can you repeat that again?
We talked about the animal world, the bear, the turtles, the deer, the possum, and the rabbit. But at the race at White Hill, the turtle was so triumphant because of the family. Can you talk to us a little bit about family structure and tradition and why it's so important for these stories?
So when you talk about the Turtle Clan, it talks about all of his family coming in to help. And so that's the way a lot of natives are. We are very family oriented. If you need something, your family's going to be right there to help you. Years ago, where we grew up, families lived together. There was farms and they owned their own land. And so a lot of times when the children got grown, they built a house or whatever right next door to mama and daddy, and just so on. And so families usually stayed within close areas of each other. And that was because of the farming too, because they all family farmed. And so they all kind of stayed close together. And that's just the way that we are. We look after each other. And if one's in trouble, somebody's family member is always there to help.
And last question, Ms. Locklear, what are the major themes that you would hope, particularly younger generations, would get out of these themes that are shared in the stories that you shared with us today?
Well, that, there's meanings and there's morals, and, we like for the children to learn those things, and that, Native people, that's the way we are. We're close together. We like to teach our children right from right and wrong. And stories are an easy way to teach a lot of those kinds of things.
Miss Gwen Locklear, thank you so much for sharing those 3 stories with us today. There are many other events that you all can join and watch today. Look at our schedule at the North Carolina Museum of History, AIHC.com. Ms. Gwen Locklear, thank you so much for sharing with us this morning.
You're welcome. You're welcome.